Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, Emmanuel.
I'd like to welcome you to this webinar.
Good morning.
And thank you all for joining.
Good morning.
Morning. Okay, so I think I'll just do a brief introduction and then we can get right into the meat of the presentations. I'd like to welcome from Microsoft, we have Ali Adel, who is the Partner Development Technology Strategist, one commercial partner, and he will be speaking on the advantages of migrating SAP to Azure. And also we have Chibuzo Ezeaso from SAP. He's a pre-sales business architect for SAP Nigeria. And he will be speaking about, giving us a brief introduction of SAP on Azure. My name is Emmanuel Ejor. I'm the Cloud and Data Analytics Practice Lead for Signal Alliance, partner to both organizations and putting together this webinar. And once again, we welcome you to the session. So right away, so as we can just do a deep dive straight in, and I'd like to welcome Ali Adel. I'd like to welcome Chibuzo to kick it off. Our agenda is going to start off with him, and then Ali Adel will come up afterwards, and then we'll have a brief session of question and answers. So right away, I'll just allow Chibuzo to take the floor, and we can kick things off. Welcome, Chibuzo. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Emmanuel, and good morning, everyone that's taking out the time to join. So like Emmanuel said, my name is Chibuzo Eza, so I'm a pre-sales business architect with SAP in the West Africa region. So today I'll be giving us a brief introduction on how you can run your SAP workloads on Microsoft Azure. In terms of the structure of what I will cover today, I'll be touching on a few topics. And I hope with these few topics, everyone on this call would have taken away what they were hoping to take away from this session, especially from an SAP side of things. In terms of housekeeping, please, I think you can stop me at any point if you do have any questions, or maybe you wait till the end of my presentation. I don't really mind, but I'll just go ahead. So from an agenda point of view, I will touch on SAP HANA and how that has affected where the SAP ERP solution is today and the value that brings, after which I will briefly touch on the Microsoft and SAP partnership for those of us that don't know, so that you know that we and Microsoft do have a tight partnership. And then after that, I will show us a brief journey on how you can move your SAP workloads to Microsoft Azure. And then we will look at a few scenarios and some of the benefits of how you can leverage Microsoft Azure to further your SAP transformation agenda. And then finally, I will touch on a few examples of some of the value creations that you can get as an organization running your SAP workloads or stack on Microsoft Azure. Okay. So I don't know if everyone is aware, but the SAP ERP solution has, transformed over the years, and a key driver for some of the recent benefits that SAP can boast of today that our ERP delivers is enabled by the technology stack that carries, all of it, which is basically built on SAP HANA in-memory computing platform. So what SAP HANA has enabled us to be able to achieve today is things around real-time processing of business processes, right? And in doing that, being able to get real-time analytics enabled by the ability to combine transactional data and analytics data in a single database. And also it has allowed SAP to simplify very significantly the data model of the SAP ERP solution. So it's very simplified. And the combination of these three new capabilities allows us to achieve things like intelligent automation of business processes, allowing business leaders to be able to get real-time insight of how the businesses are performing. And on top of that, be able to, predict what might happen based on known parameters or historical data, right? All of this happening close to real time. And of course, SAP has always been committed to providing industry best practices in terms of leveraging over 45 years of providing business solutions to organizations. So that industry best practices is what we're bringing to businesses looking to leverage technology from start, so that they don't need to start from beginning to start thinking of business processes, how they should run, but leverage SAP's experience to kickstart their business process transformation. So this is just introducing the SAP HANA. And the new SAP ERP today is called SAP S/4HANA. So SAP S/4HANA means SAP Business Suite for HANA, right? So it means SAP has rebuilt the business suite, leveraging the SAP HANA platform so that we can, achieve these three core benefits. Okay. Now, moving on into where the world is today in terms of technology and the cloud, and how that relates to most of our customers that are transitioning their landscape to the cloud. Here we have a few numbers for you based on certain surveys that was done over the past years. So it says here that 80% of enterprises will no longer use traditional data centers by 2025. And what that means is, being able to run your own data centers, managing it yourself as a business. A key reason for that is that businesses should think of running the business that they are in instead of running like an IT organization. In quote, okay? And another number here says 68% of cloud services today are delivered by hyperscalers, right? So that's where SAP and Microsoft Azure do come in, okay? Now, in terms of leveraging the benefits of the new SAP enterprise application, right? A lot of our customers are also, moving to the cloud, right? So even new customers moving to S/4HANA are, doing that directly from the cloud, and maybe older customers upgrading their older SAP ERP to S/4HANA is leveraging the cloud platform like Microsoft Azure to do that as well. So some numbers from IDC that we have here as well. About 73% of our customers globally are planning on deploying SAP S/4HANA because it delivers a lot of value to the business today. About 54% say okay, so about 54% of our customers say they will make the switch from their older SAP ERP to the SAP S/4HANA solution within 3 years, right? And about 72% of those are going to deploy SAP S/4HANA to the cloud. Okay, so a lot of companies, a lot of our customers are already embracing the cloud and moving their core business solutions to the cloud. Now, bringing it to the partnership between Microsoft and SAP, Together, we've been able to deliver a modern IT foundation to our customers. The partnership with Microsoft is been a while, over 30 years today, right? And it's not just about leveraging Microsoft as an infrastructure as a service. We're going further on how businesses can innovate on their innovate their businesses, leveraging the Microsoft Azure platform and the modern trends in technology like machine learning, predictive analytics, and all of that, all off the same platform. Okay, so today Microsoft and SAP were not just partners, but we're customers as well. So SAP is a big customer of Microsoft. Microsoft is also a big customer of SAP, right? So SAP runs Microsoft and Microsoft runs SAP as well. So about 85% of the Fortune 500 companies have SAP and Microsoft Cloud. Okay, so I'm sure my colleague Ali will touch a bit more on this when we get to his section. Now, talking more about how SAP and Microsoft are working together today to ensure a smooth transition of our customers to SAP S/4HANA. Together, we came up with what we call the Embrace Initiative, which is basically a strategic alliance between SAP and Microsoft to simplify that journey that our customers are making to the cloud, right? And three core components of that is mostly around how they can simply, make that move without worrying too much of, whether there are high risks and things like that. So SAP and Microsoft are working together to make sure that is a very simple move. And also in terms of becoming a digital enterprise, right? The cloud platform of SAP also runs on Microsoft Azure to enable businesses innovate on different, processes or areas of their enterprise. So if you do need to build new applications for a new business model, or extend an existing business process by designing your own process and extending the core of the ERP as an example, you're able to leverage some of the best practices content that is available to do that. Okay, so Ali would also touch a little bit on that as well. Now, looking at the Microsoft Azure platform itself, this here is the essential SAP architecture on the Microsoft Azure platform. So you can see that almost all of our core enterprise applications can run on Azure. And in the case where we have the software as a service applications as well, you can choose to subscribe and make sure that sits on Azure as well. So that enables you to leverage all of your Microsoft investment as it relates to your core enterprise application as well. So an example is that recently our CEO, Christian Klein, has also committed to embedding Microsoft Teams into the core SAP applications as an example, right? So in terms of innovation, everything from a business technology platform to leveraging the platform services of Microsoft Azure will become available on a single platform for businesses that are looking to innovate as well. So this is just showing the snapshot of the essential architecture that we have on the Microsoft Azure platform. In terms of the journey to the SAP HANA, all right, or SAP S/4HANA on Azure, there are 4 different paths that our customers can take, right? So customers running SAP on-premise, right, in their own data center, as an example, can decide to sunset the data center and then lift and shift that installation, no matter where it's running on any DB or anywhere, into the Microsoft Azure platform. So that way you're focusing on running your business and not on how to keep the lights on, right? In scenarios where you want to lift some of our customers that are looking to lift the SAP workloads from their on-premise and as well migrate onto maybe a different database, right? You can also do that on Microsoft Azure to leverage different, database. Say you're changing your DB from the existing one to any other one. Could be Sybase, SAP Sybase, or Oracle, or Microsoft SQL. So you can lift and migrate. So you're changing some component of the solution, and then when you have done that, you can also, the customers also in their journey to S4HANA can also start, migrating, changing the database to S4HANA. And it would still be SAP Business Suite on S4HANA. And then when they are finally ready to move to S4HANA, they can, decide to make that move. And last but not least, for greenfield implementations or even re-implementations of SAP, you can go straight away onto Microsoft Azure to upgrade to SAP S4HANA. And then from a software as a service point of view, you can also subscribe and then make sure that that sits on SAP Microsoft Azure, so that you can leverage all your Microsoft investments off the same platform. Now, talking about SAP workloads on Azure, I think the key scenario here borders on infrastructure as a service largely, right? Where you're no longer worrying about the infrastructure. You're just focusing on how your SAP application will run, and Microsoft will take care of the rest. But there's still other options where Microsoft can take up a lot more responsibilities on the platform, right? But most of the scenarios that we're familiar with today is mostly around infrastructure as a service. Now, talking about infrastructure as a service and the different scenarios that would benefit customers if they're moving their SAP workloads to Azure. The first one could be you're just starting off your SAP project, and maybe you still want to run it on premise, but the lead time to purchase. Is there a question? Okay, so instead of taking the lead time for your hardware, your servers to arrive, especially in these times of COVID where logistics is a challenge as well, you don't need to delay your project, right? You can quickly spin up a development and test environment on Microsoft Azure to quickly start up your SAP project, right? While you wait for the hardware to come, that's if you must run on premise. And then by the time your hardware is getting to you, you would have finished your development and test and quality assurance, and then you can port that into your data center and go into production. So this allows quick time to value. Or you're already live as an SAP customer and you're just moving to the cloud. So all your production environments, so you go all in and forget about worrying about how to keep the lights on or servers cooling or how to maintain or run a data center, and push all of that into Microsoft Azure and focus more on how to get more money or make more revenue as a business, right? And in terms of business continuity as well, from a disaster recovery point of view, you can quickly spin up a secondary environment where your system can quickly transition into if there's any issue. So say you're managing it on premise, but you can have your disaster recovery instance on Microsoft Azure, so that if your data center goes down, you can quickly cut over to Microsoft Azure to continue running your business, right? And then in terms of maybe you're moving to another version of SAP, or you have a lot of data and you have space constraints, you can quickly spin up an archiving instance or environment where you can archive your data as well. So underneath here is a few benefits that you can get by these different scenarios. The first and the most important one is you will be significantly reducing your total cost of ownership in terms of running your enterprise application, in this case maybe SAP. by moving them into the cloud and forgetting about keeping the lights on and focusing on running your business, right? And then, like I said, faster provisioning, right? You don't need to wait for your servers to get to you. You can quickly spin up your development and test and start your SAP project. And again, the cost of storing data as well, you can reduce that by quite a lot by moving a lot of your business data or historical data into the cloud. Okay, so these are some of the scenarios and some of the benefits. In terms of the key value drivers, right? Because at the end of the day, is about making sure that you're getting value from an investment like this, right? So looking at some of the SAP value driver and metrics as it relates to running your stack or workloads on Microsoft Azure. First is on the return on investment, almost 100%, return on investment, about 9 months payback, or even less, right? What that means is the money you would save by moving your hardware infrastructure into, say, Microsoft Azure, you can get that back almost in 9 months from savings, right? And these are some of the other, value drivers and the benefits, right? Some organizations don't like, seeing this, but I will say it. Significant reduction in staff of especially around managing the data center, maintaining the hardware, the database, and everything, right? So once you move this into the cloud, you don't need to worry much about this as a business. Then you don't need to worry about keeping the lights on, and then you can move the staff from this function to other areas of the business where they can add value to how maybe you can, grow revenue or create new business models and things like that. A key part is time to value as well. So you just pin up the environment and then you just get to work, right? And most importantly, global availability. So you don't need to worry about, whether it will go down and all. You would have service level agreements with Microsoft as an example to make sure that you have uptime, right? And some of the metrics that we've seen over the years, like up to 100% return on your investments, as little as 9 months payback period, for that investment, reduction in staff required to manage your IT, infrastructure, up to 40 to 75% lower cost savings for development and test environment, up to 50% reduction in data center costs, 60% lower storage costs for archiving data as an example. And in terms of time to value, in terms of minutes, provisioning in minutes, not weeks, not months. So quickly spin up the environment and start and get to work. Up to 30% lower provisioning and building effort, because normally when the hardware gets to you, you need to install the database, install the application, or even install the operating system and everything. So all of that you don't need to do. Once the environment is spun up, you get to work. Okay, 30 to 5 days for large complex data environments, maybe around big data initiatives and so on. So I'm sure my colleague Ali from Microsoft will touch a lot more on some of this in terms of the availability regions, the SLEs up to 99.995 uptime, guarantee and so on. Okay, so that's what I have for you today, especially from an introductory point of view. For those of us that are thinking of running the enterprise applications on a hyperscaler like Microsoft Azure, especially your SAP enterprise applications. So if you do have any questions for me, I'll be happy to take those now before I hand over to Ali. Okay, in the absence of any questions, so Ali, over to you then. So Ali, you're still on mute in case you're speaking.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay, things happens. Thank you very much, Shibuzer. Thank you, Signal Alliance team and Emmanuel for having me in this webinar. First thing first, let me just introduce myself. My name is Ali Adel. I'm the Partner Technology Strategist at Microsoft, managing SAP on Azure. And today we're going to be, as Shibuzer just highlighted on most of the stuff that I also want to just give some highlights on. It's going to be all around the partnership between Microsoft and SAP, and also about the value proposition about SAP on Azure and how we help our customers and partners to even deploy or just migrate their SAP workloads to the Microsoft Azure cloud. Please make your phones handy because we're going to have some interactive presentation here. Just feel free to, whenever you see any QR code on the presentation, just go and scan it. And this is where it's going to lead you to the links that I just going to be talking about during this presentation. So first thing first, let's talk about the Microsoft mission. The Microsoft mission here is to empower every person and every organization on this planet to achieve more. And this is exactly what we are doing with our customers, of course, and also with our partners. We help them to understand how they can migrate or even deploy their SAP landscapes on the Microsoft Azure, and also how we follow the SAP standards to move their SAP workloads to the Microsoft Azure cloud. And this is what I'm going to be presenting during this presentation. Talking, of course, about SAP on Azure, as my colleague Chibuzer from SAP mentioned, it's a long history of partnership between both companies. We do have the same go-to-market strategy, and also we do share our engineers. So we do have a Microsoft engineers sitting side by side with the SAP engineers in the SAP labs in Waldorf, and also we do have some SAP engineers sitting side by side with our Microsoft engineers in Seattle, just to make sure that whatever the technology that Microsoft provides, both engineers do the tests on different SAP solutions, and then SAP certifies those solutions, and then they publish them on the SAP marketplace and the SAP notes, as we're going to be seeing through this presentation. So talking about this partnership, we just have to go back in time with the history book. As you can see, back in 1989, Bill Gates and Hasso Platter, the both co-founders of Microsoft and SAP, they had the technology agreement back in 1993. And as my colleague Shibuzer mentioned, that Microsoft at that time became an SAP customer. And we are always saying that in Microsoft that we are one of the biggest SAP customers across the globe. And I'm going to be showing you some of the numbers that we do have for our SAP landscape inside Microsoft. And of course, when SAP introduced the first ERP that's called R3, Microsoft was there with the operating system and also with the database. Going forward with the timeline, as you can see, the Office was announced, of course, as a native SAP UI. And of course, most of you are familiar with the SAP transactions. So you know that there are some FICO transactions that's having embedded Excel inside it. And as I mentioned, when Microsoft always introduces a new technology, whether it's a virtual machines or storages, they do the tests, and then the SAP certifies those infrastructures. So in 2013, this is when SAP certified our infrastructure from virtual machines for the NetWeaver. And of course, when the HANA was introduced, again, Microsoft introduced the technology for that, for the virtual machines, the certified ones. And SAP, of course, certified that as well. So all this partnership that at the end, it leads to the Embrace agreement back in October 2019 that my colleague Shibuzer was just mentioning. Of course, we don't have to just happen the rise with SAP that just happened last night when Christian Klein, the CEO of SAP, talked about the integration of the teams within the SAP platform. And of course, Thomas also talked about the Microsoft and SAP and how we expand our partnership together. And for those who just missed this live session, you can always just scan this QR code, and this is going to jump you to the SAP YouTube channel where this discussion took place between Christian Klein and Satya Nadella from Microsoft. Of course, when we mentioned the Embrace initiative, this things moved, and it was actually a result of this long partnership between Microsoft and SAP. As I mentioned, it was back in October 2019. This is when Microsoft is helping SAP to move the customers to the cloud, to help the customers and also the partners who are dealing with the SAP workloads for a smooth migration from the classical ERP, which is the ECC 6.0, to the new ERP solution from SAP, which is the simplified HANA or the S4HANA. We are, as I mentioned, we do have the same go-to-market strategy. So we provide the customers and the partners who are dealing with those customers with the certified infrastructure from a virtual machine perspective, from a storage perspective, and also from monitoring, backup, and also the network infrastructure as well. So by this Embrace announcement, again, please feel free to scan this QR code. That's going to take you to the news from the SAP portal that's talking all about this Embrace initiative, as we mentioned before. And we are privileged in Microsoft that we just won the SAP Pinnacle Award in 2020 as a public and private cloud provider partner of the year from SAP, and we won this against all the hyperscalers in the market. And this is where you can see the news from the SAP portal as well, talking about this Pinnacle Award that Microsoft was just awarded. As I mentioned in the history book, and when I told you that, and also my colleague Shibuzo just mentioned that it's not only Microsoft is a customer for SAP, but also SAP is a customer for Microsoft. We always say that we are one of the biggest SAP customers across the globe. It's not just a saying, but it's by numbers. And here I'm just demonstrating only our ERP. So everything that we do inside Microsoft, it's in the back end, it's a whole SAP, very complex SAP landscape containing ERP, CRM, SRM, you name it. We do have most of the SAP solutions in the back end. So these are only the ERP numbers that we do have. So as you can see here, we do have around 17 terabyte of highly compressed database. We do have up to 9 million dialect steps per day. That leads to up to 300 million transactions steps per month. So this is very huge numbers. And for the numbers of the employees inside Microsoft who's using this SAP ERP, we have up to 110,000 users. And of course, most of these users are indirectly accessing the SAP. So it's not a non-GUI access. So we do have around 96% of this 110,000. They are accessing the SAP through our Microsoft portal, but of course, in the backend, it's an SAP landscape. We do have, of course, 250 terabyte of compressed storage from the, apart from the 17 terabyte of the highly compressed database that we do have. So this is only the numbers that we do have inside Microsoft for our ERP solutions. But as I mentioned, also SAP has migrated their whole SAP IT landscape in the corp level in the Waldorf to the Microsoft Azure. And this is built on the trust that SAP is having for the Microsoft Cloud. And as you can see, they started a pilot in the Q4 of 2017, and then they started their whole journey at that time all the way until end of 2020, where they added an extra 23 plus of their overall SAP IT landscape to the Microsoft Azure. The good benefit that the customers are getting from the Microsoft Azure cloud, of course, it's the Azure regions. So Azure has the more global regions than any other cloud providers. We are available across the globe, as you can see from the global map. We do have 61 regions worldwide. That leads to a 140 available countries. So in different regions that we do have, we always have 2 data centers available, like as you can see here, the one in South Africa. So we have South Africa North and South Africa West. This is useful for the customers who wants to have their primary node to the nearest data centers for them for the better latency, and they can always use the secondary data center within the same region to have their disaster recovery solutions there. So this is how we provision the SAP workloads for the customer, and we're going to be having more and more data centers across the MEA region, which is the Middle East and Africa, in the very near future, and we're going to be announcing that globally. The offering that we do have inside Microsoft for the SAP workloads, it's very unique, and we have the better offering than any other hyperscalers. As you can see, we do have 2 offerings that we are giving to our customers and partners. So we do have the TDIs, as we call them, the TDIs, which is the virtual machines that we do have. And we also have the large instances for the SAP HANA that we call the HLI, or the HANA large instances. The TDIs virtual machines that we do have, it's of course it's on-demand infrastructure. So a single virtual machine, we can go all the way up to 12 terabyte, as you can see here, as a memory consumption. And using the scale out scenario by having multiple virtual machines with multiple memories that can make one big box of one big virtual machine with a huge memory, you can use this scale out scenario to reach all the way until 96 terabytes. And as my colleague mentioned, that we do have an SLA, of course. So we do have the 99.9%. This is for the single virtual machine. Like, for example, you put the application on a virtual machine and a database on another virtual machine. So these virtual machines have an SLA for 99.9%, and this can go all the way until 99.95, of course, in the case of the high availability. Well, on the HANA large instances, these are actually bare metals inside our data centers that are totally dedicated for the specific customers who actually required more memory, more than 12 terabyte, and this can goes all the way until 24 terabyte. And of course, this is for the OLTP systems. For example, here we're talking about the S4HANA. Again, we can have a scale-out scenario, and this scale-out scenario can actually exceeds to the 128 terabyte of memory. And we provide an SLA for 99.99% for this high availability scenario when it comes to the HLI or the HANA large instance. We do have a multiple varieties of virtual machine families, and this is when we're talking about the TDIs, the virtual machines. But I just want to spot here that we always, as I mentioned, that we always follow the SAP standards when it comes to the certified virtual machines that we provide for the customers, whether they are running NetWeaver, whether they are running OLTP systems, OLAP systems, even Business One systems. We always follow this SAP node that I just highlighted down there. And this SAP node covers all the certified virtual machines that SAP is certified for their customers to be using on the Microsoft Azure. And for those who are looking forward for the hosting their HANA database on the Microsoft Azure, this link is always a public link from SAP that we always follow, just to make sure that what we provide for the customers, whether it comes to the NetWeaver using this SAP Note, or what we provide for the customers when it comes to the HANA database, we are always following the SAP standards, so they can always check the proposal that we provide, and then they can check it on the SAP side just to make sure that they are having a certified virtual machines from Microsoft when it comes to the SAP workloads. It's not only about the virtual machines, to be honest, but it's also about the storages that we provide for the customers. Of course, everyone is moving to the HANA for a better performance and a better system response. And that's why SAP introduced the HANA in-memory database. So we don't want to have any bottleneck when we provide the virtual machines that are certified for the HANA, and then we provide storages that doesn't have the good input output, and the we don't create any bottlenecks for the customers when we provide also the storages. And again, we do have a variety of storages. It depends on the workloads, and it depends on the how big is the customer database, and also about the tiering of the system. So we do have models for whatever you're using this for, a development system or a sandbox or a quality assurance system or even a production. So we do have from the standard HDD, standard SSDs, of course, and the premium SSDs and the ultra disks. And also we introduce the Azure native files, which is available on the Azure cloud. Again, we are following the same, this SAP Note, which is different than the other one. This SAP Note is not only covering the storages, but it's also covering the monitor, the backup, and also the network that Microsoft provides. It should be as per the SAP standards. So overall, when any customer is looking to move his SAP workloads to the cloud, or even deploy a greenfield on the cloud, when he follows those SAP notes and then he check with the proposal that he gets, you will see that everything that Microsoft is providing for him is as per the SAP standards. Speaking about the varieties that the customers, as my colleague Shibuzer just covered, there's a lot of varieties there. We do have all the Azure services that the customer can leverage to use and integrate within the SAP landscape. And as he put on this slide, the SAP Cloud Platform services, these are actually services that are available now on the Microsoft Azure data centers. And using those SAP Cloud Platform services, you can use the integration here, for example, the API management to integrate and have a mobile development solutions on your mobiles, and then connected at the backend with the HANA database, and you can have a seamless varieties of solutions that you can create. We don't have to forget about the Azure Active Directory. So it's a Microsoft thing, so you can synchronize between your on-prem Active Directory and the Azure Active Directory, and from there you can also configure the SSO on your SAP landscape, the single sign-on, and of course it depends on how complex SAP landscape that you have, but of course configuring the single sign-on, that's going to make your life easier, and the life of the end users, of course, much easier. The variety of the application platform here, as I mentioned, the mobile applications and the API applications, those we use them with the SAP Cloud Platform services for those who are looking for a mobile applications to be integrated, and then getting the info, read and write at the back end of the SAP. And of course, with the data, sorry. Okay. And of course, with the analytics and Internet of Things. So all these services that we do have inside the Microsoft Azure, the customers can leverage from these. And as I mentioned, the integration, the new announcement about the integration of Teams within the SAP solutions, which just announced last night. Speaking about the SAP on Azure customers, I know that most of the customers will always ask, I'm working in the retail industry and I want to know if we do have any reference for any customers in our region. I just put here, let's say like this is like 1% of most of the customers. I just picked some of the customers within different industry specifics, but please feel free to scan this QR code on top, and from there it's going to bring you to our portal where you can filter with the customers, and of course with the industry specifics, and also with the regions. And these are only the public customers that we do have on the Microsoft Azure, but please feel free to contact us in Microsoft, and of course we're going to be delighted to make a contact with other customers that they don't have their solutions published publicly on our portal. The main, of course, focus for most of the customers and also for the partners who work for those customers are the compliant. We have a huge portal inside Microsoft when it comes to the compliant, but I can assure you that Microsoft are the most trusted and compliant cloud. And just to highlight that Azure is a GDPR compliant, and you can again just follow the QR code here. It's going to lead you to our compliant portal, where we do have a separate team inside Microsoft who are dedicated just for the compliance, and they can have the discussion with the customers and the partners when it comes to the compliant and how safe that they can have their data on the data centers, on our data centers in the region. And by that, that's all what I have. And back to you, Emmanuel, and the Signal Alliance team.
Thank you very much, Ali, and thank you, Chibuzo. Very lovely and concise presentations. There's a lot of information there. I believe we will be able to send some information out after the webinar. But now it's time to take some questions. So if you do have any questions, you can either type them in the chat box or just simply raise your hand and you can have the floor, and Ali and Chibuzo can take your questions. So the floor is open for questions.
I see Dollar Boajai's hand is up. Maybe go for it, Dollar Bo.
Okay, good day all. Dolakwa Ajayi from Dangote. Thanks, fantastic presentation. Thanks for having us on the call. So I have two questions. So what's is there any backup strategy from Azure, from Microsoft or Azure regarding hybrid scenario for S/4HANA? That's the first question. So is there any backup strategy, like a robust Microsoft backup strategy for hybrid scenario, hybrid setup for S/4HANA? The second question, is it available, or is there a plan, a roadmap for S4 as software as a service? So the second question goes, is there a roadmap, or is it currently available, S4 as software as a service on Azure or Microsoft platform? Thank you.
Well, I can take the first question, and I will leave Chibuzo from SAP to answer the second one. So for your question around the S/4HANA backup, of course we do have now the HANA backup on the Microsoft Azure. When you deploy the virtual machine, and this virtual machine is assigned for a HANA in-memory database, from the Azure portal you can assign from a drop-down menu and just mention that you need the backup for the HANA for this HANA database. And we do have a varieties of a backup that you can have. This is only one that's having the HANA backup, and also we do have a file structure backup that you can also have, and also of course you can have the whole virtual machine backup. This are like three different types of backup that you can have, and I'm going to be providing once we share the deck. You're going to have a reference at the very end of my slides where you can find all the documentation from the Microsoft, which is, by the way, it's mentioned in those SAP notes when it comes to the backup and restore, and where you can find those documentations on the Microsoft's website.
Okay, thank you, Dolabor, for that question. And answering your second question, yes, there is S4 software as a service option. Actually, there are two options today. There's the public cloud option and the private cloud option. And for both options, you can decide that you want them to run on SAP Azure. So that is available today as we speak.
Yeah. Just to highlight, this is the Embrace 2.0 that was just announced as well.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for your question.
Okay, can we have more questions from the House?
No more questions.
Or if you're not willing to speak, maybe you can type your questions in the chat box. Okay, there's a question in the chat box I see. Inkirika here from NMPC. And the question is, she's wondering just how huge an initial investment would be required to migrate first to SAP S/4HANA and then onto Microsoft Azure.
That's a very good question. Shibuzui, you want me to take over this one?
Okay, no problem. So hi, Kirka. Thank you for that question. So, I mean, the whole point of this strategic partnerships that we have is directed at, reducing the total cost of ownership, for our customers. And from your question, right, it doesn't have to be two steps, as it were, right? You don't have to migrate or upgrade to S/4HANA first and then move to Azure. You can decide to do that in one step, and that also contributes to you managing the cost associated with that, because in provisioning those environments, you can as well spin up the S4 environment immediately and then migrate your data into that, right? That way, you don't even need to, spend so much time re-implementing, as it were, right? The S/4HANA solution provides a lot of benefits today in terms of how SAP has simplified the data models. And because it's based on SAP S/4HANA, right, the application layer of the SAP ECC 6.0 has been rebuilt totally from scratch to leverage the benefits of the in-memory computing platform that S/4HANA provides. So, and as well, we are providing industry best practices in the oil and gas industry as well. So I'm sure there will be specifics from an NMPC point of view. But what I'm saying is, instead of taking the whole effort to re-implement and then move, you can quickly spin up a new environment of S4 and do your Delta, Delta requirements in terms of your business configurations, right? And then move that config into the S/4HANA environment and then start fine-tuning from there. So the investment, it wouldn't be that significant, as it were, if you were starting from scratch to rebuild your solution as is on the ECC, as an example, right? So my recommendation would be spin up the S4 environment, look at what is available from an industry best practices point of view, and then tweak those best practices now to suit NMPC's requirements, as an example. So that way, the TCO it won't be that much as you're thinking, you know. So we have a lot that you can leverage to accelerate that movement today, as opposed to maybe 10 years or 20 years ago, as an example. So I don't know whether I've been able to provide some comfort there, Kiruka.
Thanks,
just to add on what Chibuzo just mentioned, because I'm going to be referring to his slide, which is this one, and also for the TCO calculator, we do have inside the Microsoft just Bing, because we are Microsoft, so I don't want to tell you Google it, but just Bing it. You just write a TCO calculator, Azure calculator, and from there you can do all your calculation and do whatever the spends that you are spending, whether it's the hosting or the electricity or the water or even the staff that you do have, and from there you're gonna just have an estimation number of how much it's gonna cost you when you implement this on the on-prem. But as Chibuzo just mentioned, for the roadmap, you can have your ECC on the first model, which is the shift and lift. Just go to the cloud, and then once you are here on the cloud, this is where you can do your strategy and think and use the cloud, use the scalability and the flexibility of the cloud to provision different virtual machines. That's going to help you to accelerate your conversion from the ECC to the S4. So once you are on the cloud, on the ECC 6.0, on any DB, this is where you can put your strategy to either go to the HANA platform or HANA database, or you can go directly to the application conversion to the S4, which is based on the HANA. So having this flexibility of the cloud, this is what you need to leverage. Scalability and flexibility is all what you need just to simplify and accelerate your journey to the cloud, to the S4.
Thanks, Ali. There's another question from Solomon Ojelade. He joined a bit late, but he says his office just migrated to SAP, and he's heard about the concepts of SAP 4 HANA and Azure. He's heard those concepts today. So he'd like to know what the demerit is to his company if he doesn't migrate to SAP 4 HANA or to the Azure platform.
He has to go to the PAM. So he is an SAP customer, so just check the product availability matrix.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm trying to look at the question, but if I do understand, are you currently on SAP S4HANA?
Solomon, are you there? I don't think he's on SAP 4 HANA at the moment. So one of the questions is, what's the demerit if he doesn't migrate to SAP 4 HANA?
Okay, so the thing is, for the older SAP solutions, right? At some point, SAP is going to sunset the solution, right? Which means there won't be any further developments on it, as an example, right? I think the deadline for that was 2025, but after or thereabout. But after that, you can subscribe to extended, maintenance and all, right? But I would say if you're not on SAP S4HANA already, you can still run your business and all, right? But the new innovative things that we're promising today, so things like real-time visibility or predictive analytics, right? Or being able to combine OLTP and OLAP, so transactional data and analytical processing in a single database so that you can get real-time insights, even as a business user, right? So S4HANA helps businesses with what we call the concept of insights to action, right? So take, for example, if your role in an organization is to maybe convert purchase requisitions 2 purchase orders, right? When you log in, and again, from a user interface point of view, the S4HANA is based on a totally new UI, which is more appealing and tends to do away with transactional codes, right, which are traditional with SAP. So with a role-based user interface, which means when you log in, the system recognizes you for who you are within the organization and then preloads what you see based on what you should be doing, right? So that you don't have to cram transaction codes as an example, and so on. So from the new UI, which is based on what we call SAP Fiori, you already have analytics embedded. So if you were, for example, manage purchase requisitions and converting those to purchase orders that you then send out to your suppliers, you can have a tile as an example that already when you log in, the tile is telling you you have 20 purchase requisitions waiting for your attention as an example, right? And if you do have thresholds to track how fast the process goes. So if it's been sitting there for more than a day, it becomes amber. If it's sitting there for more than 3 days, it's red. If it's just there within a day, it's green. So that way you can already start doing, to avoid escalations and so on. So that's the concept of insight to action, right? And then things around enabling the end user to be able to quickly analyze things, right? So building your own reports on the fly, right? Because the new simplified data model of S4 allows the business user to do that. You don't need to rely on IT to do some of those things. So those are some of the advantages of S4HANA. And then even leveraging things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, you can even automate those processes, right? To say, if the PR is within a certain threshold, just convert it to PO without me having to touch on it, right? But if there's an exception, then pack it for me to deal with it. Things like that, right, is already taking away repetitive, repetitive processes from the end user, and having AI take care of that while you focus on how to optimize or get more discounts from your suppliers, as an example, right? So S4HANA offers a lot of benefits to businesses, and SAP would recommend that if I understand, maybe you said you just went on the project, but at least, do have a plan on how to move to S4HANA, right? And if you're doing that, you also need to decide whether you want to keep it on your premise or move it to the cloud. Now, the advantage of moving it to Microsoft Azure, as an example, is very significant, right? Because just keeping the lights on in Nigeria, right? Because you have to think of the data center being on all the time. The AC is cooling the servers, right? Having people to manage the database, to tune it, to manage the operating systems, all of that you can shift to Microsoft so that you can better focus on how to, run your business better, right? So I think that's what I would, say to that. My contact, I think, will be shared as part of this presentation. Please feel free to contact if you still have some concerns. But I can go all day on this topic, so let me just pause there. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Chibuzo. We have some more questions. I'll take this one from Dolapo Ajayi. Is there any hybrid offering for on-premise and Azure?
So an example, right, would be what Ali, spoke on earlier. So a hybrid option would be to have your backup in Azure, as an example, or have your production in Azure and have your backup on premise. If that's what you mean by hybrid, right? That I guess is possible, Ali.
Yeah, the only thing that we just don't recommend is to, of course, having because this is some of the customers who need to think about that, but it's not applicable, is that they have the database on-prem and they just want to have their applications on the cloud. This is not good, of course. However, you can have your development and quality systems on-prem, and then you only have your production on the cloud. And of course, you can have the integration between them. That's fine if you do have a good connectivity and a good latency between you and the data centers that host your SAP workloads as a production. But splitting the tiers, let's say, the application and the database, if this is your question about the hybrid, this is not applicable. And of course, so also some customers are thinking about the Azure stack. They hear about the Azure stack. It's applicable on-prem, but it's not applicable on the cloud. Azure stack are still not yet certified for the SAP on Azure.
Okay. Thanks, Ali.
Thank you.
Next question is, how does SAP S/4HANA take away cloud analytics?
Okay, thank you, Kabiru, for that question. So, I mean, they work hand in hand, right? There's also the new concept around what SAP calls the intelligent enterprise, right? And S/4HANA and SAP Analytics Analytics Cloud are core parts of the intelligent enterprise framework, right? So in terms of analytics, because S/4HANA is running on SAP HANA, right? It allows you to quickly get, insights on operational data depending on your line of business, right? So if you are in procurement line of business, you can get quick insights on operational data that is related to procurement. If you are in the finance line of business, you're able to get quick insight on operational, data on finance, right? And that's the concept of what we call embedded analytics on SAP S/4HANA, right? But that doesn't take away the need for a separate BI or dashboarding tool, right? So that's why I say they work hand in hand, because embedded analytics is still based on silos, as it were. So LOB finance, LOB procurement, LOB sales, inventory, manufacturing, and so on. But from an executive point of view, if you need to combine data across those lines of business to track a certain KPI, then you need a tool like SAP Analytics Cloud, right? So S/4HANA allows you to even embed Analytics Cloud into it, right? So that you can, have a wider view of the business in terms of combining data across those lines of business and building specific dashboards for management or line of business owners, right? And outside of that, SAP Analytics Cloud also allows you to do what we call augmented analytics based on natural language processing, right? So because SAP Analytics Cloud is built to understand the data model of S4 out of the box, right? You don't need to build much in terms of universes of or cubes and everything. Just how you search on Google, right? You can say, how much have we made today from selling, this product? Just type it in natural language in SAP Analytics Cloud, and then it will go through your data and suggest, answers with visuals. And then you can take those visuals and drag them into what we call stories to build your own dashboard. So they work hand in hand to deliver what we call the intelligent enterprise at the end of the day. So it doesn't take away the need for Analytics Cloud. So I hope that answers your question, Kabiru.
Thank you, Chibuzo. The questions are pouring in. There's one question from Benga Adipojo again. It says, what is actual in this for functional consultants and data consultants? How should they prepare?
Okay, so you in fact, you are the most relevant people in all of this, right? So the functional side of setting up SAP to be able to deliver on your business processes, right? You still need functional consultants to do that, right? What having this on Azure does for you is it takes away largely the need for a basis consultant, right? So, but your business consultant will still need to liaise with Microsoft, engineers and SAP engineers working on the cloud side of things. But it does take away a lot of the responsibilities from a business point of view. But functional consultants that has to do with, FICO, all those guys are still very relevant. Nothing has changed for them because after the environment is up and running in Azure, you still need to go to Spro and configure how your business should run and stuff like that. So, and again, from the data consulting point of view, you're also very relevant as well, because this is where you're leveraging artificial intelligence and data science and all of it. So I would say for data consultants, they need to start looking at, data science type of, upskill, right? Because S4HANA is, you may have heard the concept of the digital core. It also allows you to bring in unstructured data, right? So if there are social media profiles of, say, a customer, right? You can bring that in to try and extrapolate data to get a certain insight, right? But with GDPR, there's still constraints, and SAP is GDPR compliant, so you would still need the consent of certain people to be able to use. But from a data science point of view, because things like predictive analytics have become even more important today. So the functional consultants and the data consultants, they're in fact the most important people to get to the concept of the intelligent enterprise. Yeah, I hope that answers it for you, Wenga.
Thanks, Chibuzo. Next question from Mark, and this is similar to Nkiri's question earlier. It says, is it necessary to migrate to SAP for HANA, and what would it cost to do so?
Is it necessary to migrate? And okay, so going back to my initial response, right? The reality is that SAP will sunset the solution at some point. I think it's going out of maintenance from 2025, but there are options for extended or thereabout. Yeah, there's still options, for extended maintenance and all of those, but SAP has really invested a lot in terms of research and development to improve on the business applications, right? And then we are recommending that our customers start planning on how to make that journey, right? Because at the end of the day, the old SAP will go out of maintenance eventually. Okay, in terms of costs, there are flexibilities, right? If you want to do it on premise, there are salespeople in Nigeria you can speak to, and we have businesses, small businesses that are able to afford this as well. So I'm sure cost is not much of an issue, and you can do this, CAPEX, which means you're buying the software and implementing it on premise, or you can do OPEX that allows you, free cash flow movement and do it on Azure as an example, right? Or, do even the S4HANA Cloud Edition on Azure, right? So those are options, and we here in Nigeria can also work with you to make sure that the TCO makes sense for everybody.
Thanks, Chibuzo. Two more questions. One from Bernard. It says, is there a strategy for in-country cloud hosting by SAP or Microsoft?
So I think I'll defer to Ali, because a large part of the SAP strategy is to work closely with hyperscalers like Microsoft. Yeah, so wherever they go, we are.
Yeah. We, as I mentioned in my slides, we do have more data centers that are coming in the Middle East and Africa region. At the moment, it's not publicly announced, but once they are available, of course, it's going to be publicly announced everywhere on our website. But for now, we just can say that we do have plans to invest in the MEA region with extra data centers, but for now, we don't have anything publicly available to mention here.
All right, thanks, Ali. This is a final question. This is Mark. He says he's into the inventory management. The question is, what precise advantage does SAP S/4HANA give for inventory and logistic management?
I mean, there's a lot of value, right, in terms of content that we bring from a best practice point of view as well. So no matter, and we have specific industry best practices for up to 25 different industries, right? And largely I haven't seen any, industry within that 25 that is out of scope in terms of the typical industries we have in Nigeria. So I would say from an inventory management point of view, there's a lot of value, especially from an embedded analytics point of view and simplification of the user interface as an example, right? So you can already through, embedded analytics track different KPIs in terms of thresholds, right? So you could say minimum inventory levels, once you get there, trigger replenishment as an example, or, even extended warehouse management functions in terms of more complex warehouse management and the yard management that goes with that. So just to give an example of how complex, how SAP can handle complex logistics processes around how to manage, stock or warehouses, or even yards, right? So take as an example, there are some of our customers that are using this to manage the ports, right? So imagine the containers coming off the ships, docking, and then managing the gate in, gate out for different trucks coming to lift those containers, and the RFID tagging of those, So it can manage from simple to very complex, inventory or warehouse, extended warehouse management requirements. But the key thing I'd like to mention here is the ability to embed analytics in all of this and also integrate, operational data. So you can have RFID tags, or you can have scanners, RFID scanners for inventory items, right? So you don't even need to enter the system to enter transactions. You can just tag in, scan out, and all the logic, everything is happening in the back end to account for your inventory, even from a finance point of view in terms of valuations. So first in, first out, even down to the level of bin management in terms of how you structure those as well. And even taking it down to managing your assets as a company, right? So the chairs, the tables, the computers in the office spaces, and as an example, you can even bring in Internet of Things to say, layering that on the real estate management functionality. You can say in this room, we have XYZ assets. And once they move those, leveraging IoT, you can also track those in real time. So those are possible scenarios and use cases. There's really, I don't see any limitations, especially where you also leveraging a powerful, platform like the Microsoft Azure SAP Cloud Platform, right, to do, even much more outside of what is available today in terms of different use cases. So there's a lot of value there, and I'm happy to share more, information with you. I'm sure the Signal Alliance team will share our details as well. So I don't know whether that gives you a little bit of comfort, yeah. So Emmanuel, I saw some questions up. Yeah, I saw some questions up. One from I think Ibha Moyon on, is there any certifications for this?
Oh, yeah.
So so I'm sure they are. I'm not sure of the specifics, even from a Microsoft side and as from an SAP side, in terms of running SAP on Microsoft, right? There's a lot of learning content, and I'm sure up to the level of certifications are available as well, right? Yep. So if you go to, I think, the training website for certification website for SAP and search Microsoft Azure, you would see learning and certification content on this, at least from the SAP side of things.
And also in Microsoft, we do have just search the AZ120. So this is the SAP on Azure certificate that we do have inside Microsoft. It's called AZ120. Just search it and you're going to find it.
Okay, so back to you, Emmanuel.
All right, thank you so much. So many questions and very apt answers. Would like to please have everyone fill the questionnaire that's coming up. That there's a link in the chat box. You could just please click it and give us your feedback on the session. What you can put in comments on what more, if you have any other additional questions, but just give us feedback on how the session. There's a question around a recording for this session. I believe we will be able to put that together and send to the participants. And would like to thank everybody for attending. Please fill the questionnaire, and then we'd like to wish everyone a good day. Thank you once again. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Chibuzo. The session was really, really, really enlightening.
Thank you very much.
We'll send all the information out, and just get ready to have your boxes populated with requests and questions following this session. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thank you. With regards from Signal Alliance, we'd like to thank all the participants, and we'll be in touch with regards to details around the webinar contents. Also, if you have any inquiries, you can just reach us through our email in the chat box there, marketing@signalalliance.com. Thank you once again, and wish everybody a good day and a great year ahead. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Thank you all. Bye. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.